Just one of the things that you're talking about, the different understanding where different people are at, the levels, and yet within cultures there's transitions going on. And I'd be conscious within my own Jesuit culture. There's, we're in transition. And there is, I think we were talking about this earlier, the question of death and resurrection. It's around those moments that even you're talking about the knocking, there's something, I think, so it's interesting, like at one level, I suppose that the closer it comes home to you and your culture, and the transition that your culture is passing in, that you are brought with it. You can go to El Salvador and see these people at the mythical level, but if you were, within the States, there are people who are, not in the integral level, and they probably, want to tear your hair out, I know, I see it in Ireland. I mean, it's very similar to some of the cultures there. But how the individual lives out, caught within that transition, how the individual lives is an important thing.
Well, isn't this the beauty of the work you're doing with integral contemplative Christianity? If you don't have the interior practice, that's it. That's the Rosetta Stone right there. That's what sustains you through the shifts and stages.
A couple of things I wanted to say. One of the beautiful things about integral is that one of my greatest, most recent spiritual teachers, our Christian teacher, has been a rabbi, which is not strange. Jesus was also called a rabbi, but it's been Rabbi Mark Goffney, and for all his, those of you who know him, for all his brilliance, he just gets this radical love, just loves. He's just, so I'm learning about this thing that you're talking about. My original spiritual awakening was God is love. Oh my God, I just wanted to tell my parents, we don't have to do Vietnam. We can love each other. It was like, 11 years old, like, okay, what did we leave the gas on in the kitchen or something? But meeting Mark and becoming his friend, it just really has informed my, I can just let it rip, I'm a Cancer, astrologically and reserved and stuff like that. I've become more loving, which is so gorgeous, and in my own interior heart, the historical woundings and struggles between Christianity and Judaism have really dissipated and broke down, and I just see it, same family, same God, same Spirit, same love, same scriptures even. It's been very gorgeous. And the second part is because, I've been working with integral recovery, and the map, of course, is the aqua map. We haven't even talked about that. That's a whole other conversation, how we can apply aqua to looking at Christianity and just making it more beautiful and up-to-date and gorgeous and evolutionary. But is the idea of an integral life practice. And, when I'm working with my students, when we go to the gym, before we start doing our strength training, we sit for a moment and dedicate it to our highest good, whatever that might be. So that infuses the workout with a passion, and not just narcissistic. I want to have great pecs and blah blah blah, all this stuff. But there's a real sense of it, and in my own life, because I was such a wreck, the integral life practice has completely transformed my life and opened me up. And at this point, I really see that being faithful to those practices, as imperfect as my practices are, but just sticking with it, is really my give back, to God, and it becomes very sacramental, and I was sitting on just a huge load of darkness and suffering and wounds that I was aware of, a lot of it I was aware of, not all of it, but a lot of it I was aware of intellectually, but didn't get there. And as I started to sit more and practice more and sit in that space, I had to encounter all this pain. And it's interesting that the icon right behind you, Rolly, is that comes from the monastery on Mount Sinai, which is, I think, maybe the oldest continually functioning monastery in the world, Christian monastery in the world. And when I was at Christ in the Desert, where I showed up at the end of the month long, and I saw this icon, and I was just attracted to it and brought it home, and it's next to my bed now. And so when I was doing my meditation in the morning, and I went this 9 months of just intense, deep pain and shadow stuff, and sometimes I would just like, the pain would become so overwhelming that the boundaries of my ego couldn't hold it. I was about to say, fuck it, can't do it. And I'd look over and I'd see the face of Christ right there. And this aspect of Christ that's in this picture is someone who's been there, been through it and back. And it was just this look of love, but not letting me off the hook in any sense. And I found that where my second person perspective began to reemerge, my relationship with God as other, intimate other, became in my deep suffering and this pain, and at these points where, God, I can't take it anymore. I'm so beyond what I can handle. And then this, all I can say is grace, you know. Beautiful sense of grace that the Christian tradition infuses into practice, that allowed me to stay with it, and so that and the integral model as it's been developing, and as Ken's taught us, the beyond the map, the beyond the psychoactive, Ken says aqua map is psychoactive. It changes you actually to look at life this way, but is the intense dedication to practice, and practice the body, mind, heart, and soul that we've delineated beautifully in ILP and integral transformative practice, or recovery practice, as a sacramental give back to God, not as a narcissistic, I just want to get smarter and better and cuter and, you know, and more successful, rah rah rah. But it's really, you know, you're preparing yourself to be a vessel of God, you know, and St. Francis prayed, Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. And as a small soul, as an individual human being in the world, the greatest, I think, experience can be happen is when you really feel that you're doing that. You're right in the center, as close as you can get, with all your screw up and foibles, to the center of God's will, and you're being that vessel. When we were teaching earlier about the Enneagram, I was just sitting, and this woman is right in the center of her life. And teaching us, and by doing the practices sacramentally, holy, with discipline and grace. There's an old prayer I heard somewhere, or a poem, a Christian poem, and it says, you know, ready to go, ready to stay, ready my place to fill, ready for service, small or great, ready to do God's will. You know, maybe we're not all called to be great, or write great books, or do great things, or make great contributions. Who knows what is really going on in God's mind? But the capacity to continually practice and work on this finite vessel that we've been given, and unite it with our deep soul, which is where the finite and the infinite connect inside of us, is a tremendously evolutionary, revolutionary, healing, and sacred contribution that I think integral theory is making to the field of Christianity, and it thrills me.
Can I kind of strike a slightly jarring note? And as you're talking about integral Christianity, I just realised I've kind of come into this from another stream, if you like. Mm-hmm. I can see a lot of parallels in what you're saying. And I suppose what I'm saying is there are things going on out there that are in sync. A lot of things actually in sync. Different movements around. And I think it's related to what you're talking about, you know, the Vatican doesn't lead. It doesn't actually. I mean, it never has. You know, and that's... and it's... Every movement has its language, it's in language. I mean, I could come out with a whole lot of Jesuit in language.
Sure.
And there's always... yeah, I'm just saying that. Just put that out there.
Well, and it doesn't seem to be the Vatican's job to lead on this. It's, again, back to faith-based communities, small communities of people like this. I think of Helen Palmer starting all of her teaching was in a room like this. And it's just, what that does too is to use an overused word, is it empowers us to, that the authority is no longer out there, to move this authority inside and to develop a spiritual practice inside of ourselves.
But I suppose the point I was sort of bringing up was how, and there was an issue you brought up earlier in your previous talk today about, you know, somebody saying to you, you don't understand it all. You know, you can't understand understand it all. And there's I think there are streams moving, which, you know, I mean, the integral theory, as I've been reading about it and exploring it and talking with you over the years about it, is very rich. And yet there's something beyond, I suppose.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of an experience I had with a men's group where I had to go into that group. I just got it. the whole sort of post-church thing, you know, in Ireland. And I was the only one, well, there was one other, but I realised I had to kind of allow my faith to kind of go. You know, that's what faith is. You let go. And see what came back. And I think there's even in, you know, all kinds of the way we say take a theory, which is what it is. There's, I suppose, the via negativa, you know, the way that it's not this, it's not that, it's this and it's more, and it's always tripping up, I suppose.
I love your point about the body, and your point about it being and actually the incarnational tradition, and for being the incarnational tradition, how much is neglected the body. It's just sort of ironic. I mean, incarnation is beautiful. It's that God becomes human so that we might become God. Or Meister Eckhart says, we are to become heaven so that God can find a place here.